Greetings, my name is Michael Cook. I'm an application developer, design artist, and system engineer, and in this particular video I'm going to be covering a virtualization lab featuring Windows Server 2016. Switch to my main scene here and open up Visual Studio Code, which I should have already had open, but it's okay. I have to do a fair amount of resource management in this video, so bear with me. Virtualization Lab, Windows Server 2016, New-VmController 2024.1.0. Introduction. In this video, hang on, let me get the console minimized. In this video, I'll be building a brand new Hyper-V using the function New-VmController in FightingEntropy 2024.1.0 to deploy Windows Server 2016 to meet the following criteria. Configure the virtual machine template using the New-VmController graphical user interface for New-VmController. The template will be saved to a file that can be used to perform advanced control over the virtual machine template. Install FightingEntropy 2024.1.0 to use additional functions for system configuration. Set virtual machine template properties to persist before promoting the virtual server to Active Directory domain services, domain controller, DHCP server, DNS server, IIS server, WDS server, MDT server. Configure organizational unit, security group, user, domain admin, and group policy. Allow remote desktop connection for that user, domain admin. Allow WinRM console connection for that user, domain admin. Show off a couple of other really cool and relevant functions in FightingEntropy, like get Viper Bomb and invoke SimDB. And then before I begin here, here's what I'm going to do. Search. Let's get the caps lock off. Search. There we go. So what this is going to do is it's going to pull open the graphical user interface to be able to join a wireless network, which I've featured this in other videos and stuff. But the main reason why I wanted to show it off is because, well, what it does is it accesses the wireless radios, and it's sort of, it's not necessary for this demonstration, but it is part of the module, and you know, normally it wouldn't take this long, but I am recording this with OBS, and like I said, resource management. This particular video, this will pop up any second here, but anyway, while that's happening, configure organizational unit, security group. Oh, I already read all that, that's right. So here's the wireless scanner that I featured in a video. I've featured in a few videos actually. So this right here is the wireless network scanner, and some of the styling in it, the data grid rows and stuff, it still has the white, the blue, and the pink and whatever, and that can be changed pretty easily. But you know, I've got some profiles on here, and then I've also got a feature that allows me to scan for any current networks. Pretty sure that's scanning. Yeah, my mouse is not the best, but anyway, there's a bunch of access points within range here. I can't remember exactly what VHT. I think it's very high throughput, 802.11.1 or whatever. If I wanted to connect to that, I certainly could by doing that. That seems to be the one that's the closest. I'm pretty sure this library that I'm at has a. Why didn't that pop up with the message? It's supposed to come out with a toast notification. So, well, the toast notification thing isn't working for whatever reason. That's right. Typically, there would be a toast notification that'll pop up saying, "Oh, you're connected now." But anyway, that's the introduction so far. Just showing off that because I haven't shown that off in a while. But also get Viper Bomb and invoke SimDB. So if I go to get Viper Bomb mode 1. It's another function that I've shown off in a couple of other videos. This has console input and output, so this is going to access a whole bunch of things in Windows. Right now it's just ascertaining ways to control the commands that will get the input back from the system. Anyway, it'll get information from the system, which you can see that in the console right there. It'll get stuff from the network. It'll show stuff there. And it'll get the hot fixes. It'll get the installed Windows features. It'll get all the application X packages. and you know, it'll get applications that are installed through either WMI or MSI, and then it'll go through the event logs in the system, be able to figure out how many are in each event log provider, and then it'll get all the tasks, the scheduled tasks in the system, and then it'll also get all the services and such, and then it'll also, this is something that touches on some things that group policy can do, which customize the system, not unlike what DISM++ does. Anyway, I haven't used DISM++ in a while, but a lot of what I've put together kind of emulates what it does, or you know, it fully does what it does to some extent. So anyway, this is the module controller. Well, it's not really the module controller, it's just a graphical representation. This is something that is featured in a number of my other videos, but I haven't implemented it into every single interface, right? So I got the graphic, the company graphic, and it's got the version and the date and everything. It might have to change some of this stuff, but anyway, now you got the system information, you know, BIOS, be able to show you all the information about the BIOS in the system, and then you know, it'll give you there's a lot of stuff that is similar to like get computer info, but you know, it also goes into like the addition of the operating system and get the number of processors that are in the system, and then it'll show the disks that are in the system. And I'm kind of not entirely sure I want to stick with this particular layout. I think I want to change even more about this, but you know, it's a lot of different things that I've been working on here. And yeah, so we got the virtual Ethernet adapter number 2, and you know, what else is it? The virtual Ethernet adapter that's piped over to the Wi-Fi adapter, but the rest of them are all disabled. And I still would like to implement further things in that as well. So now we get to the OS hotfix type stuff, and then as you can see, I'm running Windows 10 Pro. That's the version. I think that's 22H2. It's 2019 something, but it's got a whole bunch of hot fixes on it that kind of bring it up to date. And you can see what date, what was installed when, and you know, just installed one like a couple weeks ago, and a couple of them. And then yeah, the idea here is that I'd be able to like add a profile, like use a combination of Windows Server Update services or Microsoft Update catalog, and be able to ascertain patches to simulate the concept of slipstreaming updates into the image and stuff. But this isn't complete or anything like that. If I click on that, I think this, yeah. So then that'll look for, yeah, I have to continue developing that. But yeah, basically each tab has that where I could click on it, and then that pops up, and then I can populate it and stuff. And then the features, those are all the installed optional features in the Windows operating system. Right, like this has little to do with Windows Server 2016. However, this utility is going to be distributed by this process that I'm about to show you, or at least, I don't know, applications that were installed, everything that showed up in the console is like all in these. In fact, there's even a console pane that everything that was sent to the console is showing up here. And you know, at some point, like I'll have different versions of logging so that it won't log everything, right? And then you know, the event logs that I talked about. So there's a bunch of commands that touch on event logs in the system, and some of this information kind of stretches beyond what I designed for the GUI and everything. But that's, you know, not a big deal. At some point I'll be able to fine-tune all of these details and flesh everything out, but I have to demonstrate like what this tool does or what the many tools do in my module. So, and we got the tasks, the scheduled tasks for the operating system. A lot of the stuff you could find with like what is it, Task Manager? Yeah, some of the stuff is in Task Manager, but not all of it. Anyway, the services that are currently running or not running, but they're installed, they're all listed here. And then at some point I'll reintegrate the profile controller that was implemented with ViperBomb before So as you can see, like, yeah, the utility is Viper Bomb, but it's kind of extending into other things that that aren't service related. Well, they sort of are. And then you got the options. So like this is sort of like going into file options in the I don't know. You go into the Explorer and you go into file options, and then some of this stuff allows you to change, you know, like pin to quick access, pin to start. This is stuff that I worked on with Mad Bomb 122 and this as well. But I've you know, overhauled like the way that it works and the code behind it and everything. As you can see, Black Viper right there. Black Viper is the original author of the Black Viper service configuration featured on his website. And then Mad Bomb 122, he came up with a program that sort of configures Windows 10 and everything. And I saw an opportunity to kind of apply it to a bunch of other things as well. And then you know, yeah, I think I covered that actually. And then, you know, not all this stuff is functional at the moment, but, you know, then I also put a little bit of time into this. So this allows me to look at any profile that's in the system and then be able to look at its, you know, look at the SID and look at any of its properties and stuff. And if I want to see how much content is there, then I can go to this page and I hit load. It's actually going to take a minute because I think there's like 360 something gigabytes of data in this profile, or maybe it's 42. I don't know. Yeah, because I didn't select MC admin. That one's got like 350 or whatever. So then like it shows all the files under that profile, but it doesn't show anything for the registry, which is something that I'm going to need to do if I want to implement like a way to transfer this in a similar manner to PC Mover by LapLink. But anyway, that is the Get Viper Bomb utility. So I wanted to show all of that off before I continue here. In order to meet all this criteria, I will be deploying FightingEntropy 2024.1.0 to the virtual server, and then using some of the other functions in the module: get initialize VM node, get FEDC promo, initialize FE80 instance, and get MDT module. Doing all of these things in order will allow me to continue to develop new FE infrastructure, which has not yet been updated, but will likely be updated within the next month or two. As for New-VmController 2024.1.0, I've re-implemented a control mechanism that uses server message block to control the flow of information between the virtual machine host and the virtual machine guest, the server, and we'll be demonstrating how that works. However, I will also be using the function start TCP session to transmit scripts to the virtual machine and then executing those scripts. Here's a list of other videos that demonstrate what New-VmController does and can do. I'll probably put these in the description, or I'll make a resource page and then I'll link it to the video description. Notes: the Microsoft Deployment Toolkit is actually called the Microsoft Deployment Toolkit and was originally business desktop deployment developed by a badass named Michael T. Nyhouse. Pretty sure I pronounced it correctly. Another badass named Jeffrey Snover told Red Rover to move over, and now we have PowerShell. They're both former head honchos, executives, and wizards at the Microsoft Corporation located at 1 Microsoft Way, Redmond, Washington, 98052. Nyhouse and Snover both had heavy involvement in the development of either PowerShell or Business Desktop Deployment, Microsoft Deployment Toolkit, or System Center Configuration Manager, whereby setting the benchmark quite high in terms of building things that work well and do a lot of work. Microsoft is currently the most valuable company in the world with an estimated value of about $3 trillion. So over the last month since I recorded a video on, I think it was January 5th or January 10th, I can't remember the exact date. I have spent you know, the last 3 weeks working on this, right? And that's what I'm about to show here. Before I do, what I'm going to do is I'm going to flush the module here, right? So this file right here can be found at this link right here. So if I say start, it's going to open up my web browser and go to that page. So what that goes to is this link right here. So the purpose of this is to redirect it to the newest version, as I mentioned this up here. And this is the thing that I'm about to execute here, right? I had to update this. I've also got a document that has it stylized and colored and everything. Why does this keep doing that? And then I'm gonna close that out. Right, and then check my resources here. 4.2. Yeah, I'm gonna have to. Well, here's what we do. I'm gonna highlight all of that code on that link that I just showed, right? And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to say module, because it's saved it to a variable named module. I'm going to say remove, right? That's going to remove everything. Oh wait, hold on a second. It's being used by another process. So let me go ahead and close this out and then restart it. Yeah, I have to find some way around that. But basically, if I ever launch any of the GUIs and it uses some of the graphics for whatever reason, the process hangs onto it, I'm sure I'll find a way around that so that it'll delete it. But all right, this is a little out of order because the video actually blacked out when I was recording this. The permissions popped up and then it was blacked out until it crashed. And then you'll find out in a little bit that I picked up from where it crashed and then continued on with the script here. So I just removed the entire module. It removes all the registry entries and the files, resources and stuff, and now it's back into memory. All right, and now I use the force verbose to show like the verbose output for when the module is called into memory. Typically, I wouldn't use that, but I want to show the verbose output and like all the files that it's importing, exporting, and doing whatever. And then I went ahead and loaded New-VmController right here. And then that is going to load the controller, and then I'm going to invoke the GUI. So right now I am connected to Wi-Fi at a totally different location from when I started this. And what I'm going to do is go to connections, hotspot tethering. There we go. So now I have two different connections to that network, which I wanted to showcase in this video, or which I did. And you know, it's hours later. So now I'm connected, and here's the graphical user interface. I'm going to populate it. I did feature this in a video back on like New Year's Eve, I think, or maybe that was just the network aspect. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is click refresh. And what I'm going to do is remove the switch and then recreate it. So yeah, much in like the video I recorded a few weeks ago, this process goes through and collects all the network adapters, the switches, and everything. And then right here, in order to continue with the creation of the template, I have to create a virtual switch. Well, the switch is already created, but I wanted to show how like I could remove the switch and then re-add it, and then this will repopulate all of the information that the remainder of the video will feature. So I'm going to click new. What happened? Hold on. All right. That did not happen earlier. So I have to figure out what caused that, but I'm not going to do that now. So anyway, now I got this. I'm going to go ahead and create external switch. I could also use internal or private, and then I'm going to name it external. And I'm going to make it part of the management OS, right? And then it's going to repopulate that data grid up top, and then if I select it, it's going to have the information that gets populated to the template when I go to create it. And here it is. So if I select that, it doesn't have any networks. If I click that, it does have networks. This does have a network, but I think it's probably IPv6 or it's internal. So it'd be like 169. What is it? 169.1254 or whatever. But anyway, then I would click on that and then go to range and scan it, and then I'd be able to see all the nodes on that particular network. Right, and then you know, if I scroll down, I'll be able to see trusted. So that's this particular system. And then a little bit further down, what is it? 129. 129 is the gateway. So all those fields are going to be populated into the DHCP settings and stuff. I'm going to click assign, and that's going to assign that particular adapter and that selected network to the template, which is right here. It's going to apply it right there. As you can see, no credentials there. As you can see, no images there. So I go to these tabs here, and that is already configured there. I'm going to say I want a system account. It's going to be transfer, and then the password is what is it? Exclamation point A. Set clipboard. All right, and then I can add that one, and then I add another one. All right, so now I can add that, and then I click assign, and that's going to assign those accounts to the template. And now what I'm going to do is go through the image folder, which was featured in the video a few weeks ago, and then import those, and we'll go back over to this. And that's going to OpenSense. I haven't used that in a little bit. At some point, I have to re-implement a way for multiple networks to be used by the template. I made a design choice to kind of limit it to one. I also have to consider being able to import existing VHDs or whatever to a particular system. Right now, as it is, it's just going to create a system with a single VHD, and I don't have any methods or anything in the VM-controller that would be able to access an existing VHD, but that's okay. I will eventually have that. So in this pane right here, this is what we'll be seeing in the installation portion. And the ones that say 8.6 gigabyte, those are without the GUI, which I have to edit this a little bit so that it conveys that here, rather than just kind of like say the same edition, because I don't think everybody's going to know the difference. But that's the edition that I'm going to be using. You have to find a way to make that long name fit in here and everything. And so now I'm going to click assign. I clicked the check boxes in order to make sure that those were selected for the template. And then now if I go to the switch, that's there, that's populated. If I go to the credentials, that's populated as well. If I go to the image, that's also populated. And now what I want to do is go to the memory, change that to 4, change the drive, leave that there, generation 2, CPU cores, 2 of them. And then all that is left to do is find the location where I want to save the templates. So it'll be there. All right, and then click set. And once I click set, it's going to allow me to change stuff down here. And change that to server. It's going to be DSC0. And then go to the location where it's going to create the virtual machine and all of its subdirectories and stuff. So DSC is a combination of domain controller, but also desired state configuration. And the previous iteration of this whole function / module, FightingEntropy, was desired state controller, and that's what DSC stands for, in case anyone was wondering. It's a hybrid of a domain controller and something that's going to perform something that's equivalent to desired state configuration. The whole point of this is to have a desired state config. Oh yeah, you gotta fill that out again because I didn't mean to do that. I can also just type it in too, right? And then click create. All right, so now it's there. All right, and then I can click export, and that's going to export it to the file VM DSC0 to FEX, which if you look here, that's how it's able to reinstantiate that file into an object. Deserializing. So the whole point of this is to serialize some of this information, and then deserialize it into an object that has methods. And at that point, now I can go to the locate. I can browse to the folder where the templates are, right? And then click import. And now it's going to import the information for existing virtual machines as well as just the templates. And in that list, you see DSC0, right? So now I can go ahead and close this and continue from where I left off. All right, continuing off from where I left off. My device just kind of crashed out, rebooted on me, so I gotta restart the process. This happened a fair number of times when I was testing. My laptop just does that sometimes. It'll be like, I don't feel like working anymore, and then it reboots. So it got to the point where it was installing the operating system, and then it crashed out. So anyway, what I'm going to do right now is launch this, and then I'm going to remove the existing virtual machine because it will be on and running. In fact, let's see, performance. Yeah, 7.5 used. So, yeah, I'm gonna, normally I would just start over and then just continue recording it all continuously, but I'm gonna wind up editing these two videos together. And yeah, as soon as this opens up here, then what I'm gonna do is use the remove feature and then clear out the machine that it started, which is still in existence, but it makes no sense to not flush it out and then restart it. So yeah, this is the process. Each time that it crashes, I just launch the function back into memory. It's not any fault of my programming that caused it to crash. It's just the hardware that I'm working with. And so now that will launch that back up, and I'll say vm.remove. And that will clear it out. And you see verbose information about it happening. It's good that I like showcase this, but like I wind up doing this at the very tail end of the demonstration anyway. So yeah, depending on how much information it installed, then it's got to go through and destroy all it's got to remove the hard drive, it's got to remove the virtual machine, etc. and so forth. You know, it is making the assumption that there's only like one hard drive. At some point, I will make accommodations so that it can handle multiple hard drives or an existing hard drive, and then like adapt it into the system. So like I could prepare a VHD for a particular system, and then destroy the system, and then carry over that VHD, and then reattach it, and then it'll effectively be almost like using restore points and stuff. So anyway, let's take a look at that. Yeah, plenty of memory now to launch this and get it going. So I'm going to go ahead and select all this information again and then run it. And once it gets to that point, then I'll have to go hands-on. So anyway, yeah, running through all the stuff that I talked about already. And I don't remember what I was talking about before it crashed, but you know, this installation takes a lot less time than the Windows 10 installation. It's just that post configuration takes longer. So as you'll be able to see, like I'll scroll through, checking if the machine's running, get keyboard, wait for that, install Windows menu, which it just did, and then hit next, it hit the timer, and then selecting the version of Windows. So these idle states, they're very useful, but they're not consistent at providing control in every scenario, because sometimes the system will continue to be like churning away at something. I'm not really entirely sure what it does, but sometimes it'll just be stuck at 25% processing CPU usage. And yeah, for every second that goes by, like it'll check the idle state, or it'll get the virtual machine information from like WMIC or something like that, and then it will continue to make a tally of how many seconds in a row it is below a certain CPU percentage. So if it's at or below 5 for 5 seconds, then it will complete that idle state and then continue on the script. And it's pretty important, because if it just continues to churn away at instructions and such, then it'll try to input commands that it's not ready to process, and that's not good. So that's really what this script ultimately comes down to, is being able to keep things in chronological order and handle errors and such. So I'm going to try to stick to just where the virtual machine is at. And as you can see, like I'm a little bit behind, but this uptime signature here, or method, installing catch and release ISO upon reboot. So what that means is it's going to wait for the system to reboot. As soon as like this hits 100, it's going to install the features, install the updates, finish up, and then reboot. And then as soon as it reboots, it will dump the ISO because it's not needed beyond that point. And then we'll be able to perform initial setup, and then at some point reboot again. So the initial setup is all automated, but it's just kind of like preparing the system, like sysprep or something. And then once it gets back from that, then it'll get to the point where it says, set the default administrator account, and then you'll see a colorized message down here that conveys the last console message. And then it'll assign a variable setup to the one that is the setup account. The setup account is the administrator account, and it has a randomized password. That's what the GUI created as I made that template, and then assigned those credentials and such. And even if the computer crashes and stuff, that template at the top, the file vmdsc0.fex, which I should probably just name XML, because that's what that file is an XML object. But yeah, I don't know. Now, as you can see, like it is flying right through the setup and everything. It got everything out of the image for the data center edition with the GUI, and yeah, it also has a TPM on there, which doesn't need to be enabled for Windows Server 2016. But yeah, I'm going to try to use that as like a benchmark or requirement with all the virtual machines that I'm developing, or the system to install them. And yeah, so now that it's installed, well, it's not fully installed. It's going to go through a bunch of stuff. But yeah, every single time that you go to that file, it's going to reinstantiate all of the accounts and the network information. So like if I change information about the network while that template exists, then it will actually cause problems. But I haven't experienced a situation where if I haven't finished installing a virtual machine, then I wouldn't scrap it and then try to continue using it. I think the key idea with this utility is that it creates the virtual machine so that I can do further testing. I don't need to use cloud services to be able to do this. I don't need to use something like Azure or Kubernetes or Docker or anything like that. Some of this stuff that I'm programming into the system touches on Chocolatey, Chocolatey is a package manager that works a lot like RPM on Linux, or RPM, or sudo something, or yum. That's what I was going to say, yum. And it's very similar in the way that it works, but it's custom tailored for Windows images, and it will touch on stuff like NuGet or OneGet, and that's beside the point. Now we're at the point where it is going to idle out, and then it's going to input that the random password that the GUI created. Well, the GUI didn't create it, but the programming and the code behind created it. It just, the GUI allows that whole process to be streamlined, so to speak. So anyway, now it's going to enter in the password twice, and then now it's finalizing the settings, and now it's going to wait for an idle state, and then now there's like a method named login. So during the initial setup, there's only one account, the administrator account. So it uses that account as much as it can to set up a system for, like in this instance, I'm going to be updating this to a domain controller, and then setting up an organizational unit and security group and a user, and that user is going to be populated with all of my information and the credential that I entered in for mcook85. And then because the domain is what I entered in, then it'll be mcook85@securityjustplus.com, which is a domain that I own, but I don't have a website serving to the public at the moment. It's because I'm still working on all this system management stuff. It's not a high priority for me to have a website up when I'm doing so much of this stuff with system management and in conceptualizing ideas. At some point it will be back up, but for the time being it isn't. Plenty of my content can be seen on GitHub or YouTube. So anyway, yeah, and now we're at post installation. It's gonna idle out. It's gonna load the script block engine, which has some scripts that utilize the virtual keyboard to enter it into the system. Basically anytime that you see information being typed into the virtual machine, it's using the virtual keyboard. But at some point after I install the FightingEntropy module on this system, which is going to be basically in the next step or two, it will allow me to use SMB, server message block, and start TCP session to directly send over information and commands. So it bypasses the amount of time that it would spend sending information over. Though some of the scripts work well with transmission, some of them just flat out cause the whole process to freeze up, and I don't understand how or why. Anyway, it is still waiting for an idle state of 5% for 5 seconds, which should be any second now. There is a way to just kind of like bypass this idle state right here and continue on, but the virtual machine could be processing something, and if it is processing something, it'll interrupt what is being typed into the keyboard. So it's the best practice is to just wait. But there are newer systems out there that virtualize hundreds or even thousands of systems on a particular cluster, the virtual server cluster. And if you have better hardware, then you'd be able to just directly do all the stuff. You wouldn't have to wait around. So now it just launched PowerShell. 2016 Server 2016 has the command prompt with the keyboard shortcut for the start menu. the right-click Start menu. And so now it just saved the checkpoint. And now it's using the virtual keyboard to type in a password, and it is securely doing that by saving it as a secure string, and then it's creating a credential. And that credential is going to be used to access the file share on the host system. And so it's going to look for any volume or drive letter, and whatever the first one is available in between Z and A that's not in the volume variable, it's going to assign that letter. And you'll be able to see that in a moment here. And then when it sets the content, then you see it right there, SMB map to Z drive. And so what this process does is it's integrating the SMB to be able to send information from the guest system to the host system. And now, it might seem like a small amount of information right there, but the thing is being able to send information to the host machine is actually kind of challenging, to be perfectly honest. I mean, you could use other methods to do it, but to do it reliably and consistently and automatically, yeah. So that just installed the FightingEntropy module, which I showed the installation earlier in the first half of this video before it crashed, before my system crashed. And then, yeah, now it's importing the module on that client, that server that just got installed. And now, let's scroll down to the part where it is, right? It just ran that whole entire script. And now it's going to set the screen resolution to 1280 by 720. And there it is. And now what it's going to do is it's going to set the initialized VM node, and it's going to input a whole bunch of information for the network adapter and everything in the trusted system in the network, which is the 192.168.42.24. And then it's establishing persistence. So anytime that I call that function again, it's going to recall this object that's in the host on the virtual system, the virtual machine guest. So it just set a status for initialized VM node from that, which was shown here. But it's so much stuff is happening right now that I'm not able to keep up with it. But now it's gotten to install KB 4486129, which yeah. So if I go through this stuff here, I'll be able to tell you, like that was the command that instantiated it and set persistence and stuff, and then it set that that console message over here, initialize VM node. Right, it was successful at that, and then it set the power configuration. There's a little scriptlet, and then this variable here, content, and then VM transmit script. It basically is converting the scriptlet and then various properties into an XML object that it sends over the TCP session object. So every time that you see control receive, or let's see, where is it? Transmit TCP. It's utilizing the start TCP session function in FightingEntropy. And now it downloaded that file pretty quickly using bits. Background information transfer service. Yeah, I think that's what it is. And now it's installing Microsoft.NET Framework 4.8 for Windows Server 2016. I think on 2019 or 2022 that is already included. I'm not certain of that. I haven't tested that yet. But this is the prerequisite for me to be able to start testing with Server 2019 and 2022 again. I have used both of those already extensively, but like Server 2016 is what I started on in development terms. I had used Server 2008 and 2012 extensively before I was a programmer, but now I'm writing scripts that do a lot of really interesting stuff, and like everything has to work from beginning to end in order for me to to create an an archive that will, like the archive that it installed, yeah, everything has to work, or at least a lot of it does. It still has a lot of functions in it that need additional fine-tuning, like new FE infrastructure. I haven't touched that in a couple months. I started working on it a couple months ago, and I had a virtual machine that I was using to a server operating system to be able to further develop that. But you know, I thought, why don't I set up the prerequisite for setting up everything that new FE infrastructure needs? And so that's what this script is. This script is going to set up all of the prerequisites needed for new FE infrastructure, which I did mention that in the beginning. But because I haven't demonstrated the full capabilities of new FE infrastructure from like a newer, better, faster system, it's important for me to be able to show that the process will work on basically any machine that you try to use this process on. If it's got Hyper-V installed, you know, I'm running this whole virtual machine Hyper-V situation on Windows 10 Pro. I showed the version with the get Viper bomb function, and you know, Hyper-V works on Windows 10 and Windows 11. You just have to install a couple of packages. In fact, I have a batch, not a batch script. I have a PowerShell script that anyone can find on my gist.github.com, and then be able to run that, and then it'll install Hyper-V, even on Windows 10 Home Edition. And so long as you have the hardware that can virtualize stuff, you know. So anyway, prior to installing Chocolatey, you have to install this .NET framework, because Chocolatey depends on it for whatever reason. And if you're to try to install Chocolatey right off the rip without installing this, then Chocolatey will do the same process that I'm doing right here. And basically, what this is installing right now is a hot fix. And then this is part of the reason why I showed the get Viper bomb utility first, because with the get Viper bomb utility, once it's complete, it's going to allow me to be able to incorporate that almost as if like it's being slipstreamed. So I can set up like a bunch of resources that point to the file, so it doesn't have to download it from the internet, and then it can install it alongside a whole bunch of applications and drivers and other stuff. But I'm not quite at that point. I'm just kind of showing how to sculpt out this system so that, you know, if at any time I want to set up a lab to be able to work on stuff on the server operating system, and I don't have the hardware to do it on hand, then I have the tool. I made the tool to be able to do that. Yeah, I could manually set up all this stuff and do it that way, but the fact that this process is basically all automated. There are a couple of portions where I haven't automated all of it, but you know, we'll get to that point. The get FEDC promo, that is not automated. I have to manually enter stuff into the GUI, though I could very easily pass over information from the what is it, control F initialize VM node, and then continue from there. So anyway, yeah, it's gonna wait about 60 seconds, and then it'll log back in, and then it will reinitialize the VM node. As you can see, the icon is on the desktop for FightingEntropy, which was there before I had to reconnect. And that little message came up, said could not reconnect shares, network shares, but you know, the persistence of initialized VM node set the information to be able to re-access that share. And so it's going to reinstantiate it once we use that flag, initialize VM node, reinitialize. And as you can see here, I'm using string interpolation to pass over a variable. So the variables that are being saved, that are being used in this process, this host here on the virtual machine guest, the PowerShell host on the virtual machine guest, they're being saved into this VM-controller, which I didn't showcase how it does that, but that's what it's doing. So V stands for control, and then you know, to initialize the VM node, it's going to type all that stuff in the scriptlet, and then once it reinitializes, it's going to save something to the SMB share saying, hey, we're good to go, which will show up any second now. And there it is. And then it proceeds. So as soon as this is done and then it passes over, you see how it waited for that SMB information to be there before it continued to send instructions. That is a better way to control what's going on in the system rather than use the idle states and stuff. It is still using an idle timer, but it is waiting on input from the guest system before it proceeds, before it says, okay, I'm ready for the next instruction. So these are the things that I did implement in videos back in like 2021 with the SMB information being transmitted and received and whatever. But, you know, I don't know. I basically had to rebuild a lot of this stuff from scratch, even though and didn't really have to rebuild it from scratch. So yeah, right now it's running scripts that were saved that are in New-VmController, but it's not going to run all of them. It's just going to run some of them, particularly the time zone, the ICMPv4 firewall, the WinRM config, and the self-signed certificate and listener configuration, and then setting up the firewall for WinRM, and then you know, all that information and stuff. And yeah, and then just established the WinRM HTTPS firewall entry. So now I'll be able to use WinRM to connect to the system. Well, not right this second. I could use it right this second, but that would be pointless because it still needs to configure some stuff on the system. And so it just enabled a firewall rule for remote desktop, so I'll be able to access the machine via remote desktop. And some of the stuff you could use group policy to also set up firewall entries and stuff. Now it's installing Chocolatey, and Chocolatey installs pretty quickly actually. See, it's already done. And now it's going to do the get FEDC promo to main controller promotion. And that is when I'm going to maximize the window. So it takes a minute to load up. It's mainly because I don't know, when I was working on this a year and a half ago, well, not a year and a half ago, a little over a year ago, excuse me, I was rebuilding it using the derivative that I made about 3 or 4 years ago with a hybrid desired state controller, and that was able to do what we'll be seeing here in a moment. So it is being pretty meticulous, getting the XAML, the control profile module information from the FightingEntropy module, and then basically pulling a lot of system and network details, not in a too dissimilar manner from the get ViperBomb utility. And as you can see, it says current system is a virtual machine. So if that is the case, I'm not going to be able to install certain features. So now I'm going to maximize that. I'm going to unpin that. Wait for that to go up. And now this is get FEDC promo. So as you can see, the build information is there, and then the forest mode is going to be 6, which is threshold, and then domain mode, and then the features. So it's going to install all of these features. A lot of it is the web server IIS type stuff that'll allow like branch cache and deployment for NDT or PSD over HTTP or HTTPS. But in order to use HTTPS, you need to have a certificate on the target system boot image, and you have to have a way to make sure that that certificate's going to be correct. Otherwise, that method is totally useless. And then Viridian. So as you can see, this is a virtual machine, so it's not going to enable those, and it disabled them from being clicked and whatever. But this is meant to kind of streamline the entire process, right? And then install DNS, create DNS delegation. This is a new for us, so what is it going to create delegation to? So then you got these default file paths and everything that it's going to create the NTDS partition or the database, and then sysvol stuff in the logs. Those are the default paths, by the way. And then if I click on either one of these, it's going to use an event handler to clear it all out. Yeah, I have to work on this particular utility a little bit more. That delay was kind of strange, and then also this was mainly because I was trying to figure out why certain things would work and then certain things wouldn't. So that shouldn't work, but that will. If I use that, that's not going to work, right? So as I change the domain name, it's gonna tell me what's wrong with it. Yeah, well, that's, yeah. That's not the right message, but that's all right. Yeah, I have to finish that at some point. And then this panel is not there because I'm not using the as you select tree, child, clone, it's going to change the command, and it's also going to change everything in the graphical user interface, which I'm not going to showcase all of that right now. But when you have when you've entered in a credential and you want to connect to it, then it'll show information here to be able to connect to a fellow domain controller for the other 3 things there. And then the DSRM key. All right, and then now, because the summary in this profile, everything passed, I can click start. Or I could click test and it'll just use the test functions, but I'm going to go ahead and click start. And now that's going to do that. And this process is going to require, it's going to install a whole bunch of features, and then it's going to reboot. But before it reboots, it'll set a scheduled task. And in that scheduled task, it will launch the function again, but then it'll provide an input object with all the information that I input, so it'll automate that whole process. And this is something that I had to take a while to figure out, because if there's no human to be able to continue the process, then that presents a bit of a challenge. How do you get around that? So this is going to install a whole bunch of features that are seen in the log right there. And then, yeah, this part isn't exactly exciting. But anyway, what else could I talk about while that's happening? It's going to take a fair amount of time to do all of that. So I had a... if I do anything with this, it's, I don't know. You know what I could do? Yeah, I could just read all this. So this is the This is the actual file, and I included some of the README information for it. FightingEntropy is a modification for Windows PowerShell that is meant for various tasks related to system administration, networking, virtualization, security, graphic design, system management, and maintenance, and it will eventually be usable on all platforms where PowerShell is able to be deployed. At some point it won't just be applicable for Windows PowerShell, it'll also be applicable for PowerShell Core, but PowerShell Core eliminates a lot of the things that I invested a lot of time into in developing this module for Windows. So at some point I will reintegrate, I will change its focus to do more with PowerShell Core, and then it'll be cross-platform where work on Linux and Windows. So anyway, that is the video right there. No, that's not the video right there. This is basically me updating the module to the new version where it's got this module controller. So beforehand, it was just kind of a function that loaded a bunch of information into the console, but now it has a whole bunch of different methods that allow me to have certain shortcuts in other functions. So some of the functions in the module call upon this core portion of the module to be able to do stuff. So if I want to get a file that's in the control folder or in the functions folder or in the graphics folder, I can use the getFE module with a switch for control or functions or graphics, and then it'll get me back those particular files and assets. And so, I haven't really talked about this whole thing in entirety, so that is what I'm going to do right now. While that's going, this is going to take at least I don't know, 20 minutes or 30 minutes to install all these features on this system. So I'll keep that in the back burner, and then I'll what the hell. Alright, so the console time is used to track console logging, and it's similar to the stopwatch, where I enter in start or end, and then it'll have the name, and then it'll have the time, and then it'll be initially set to 0. But if I hit the toggle, then it will get the current time whenever that method is accessed, and then it'll have the set value to 1, and then it'll put the time to string. And then the console entry is basically every entry in the console that is logged. So it'll have an index, it'll have the amount of time elapsed since the process was started or the console was initiated, and then it'll have a state, which will be anywhere from -1 to 100. And I haven't fully developed how this plays into whether something that the programming I write, whether it's successful or not, but it gives me a way to see whether something worked or not. So if something didn't work and it throws a -1, then I could throw the process, and then it won't continue to perform whatever function that it's doing. And then the status is basically everything that you're seeing in the console, right there. So anyway, and the string is what the heck? Or no, the status is basically just the message, and then the string is all that information kind of concatenated or interpolated. That's string interpolation right there. So it's taking each console entry is manipulating the strings to a large degree. And then there's the console controller, which is a collection of status objects, uses itself to create and update messages. So it'll keep track of the start time, it'll keep track of the end time, and then when the end time is there, it'll come up with the span, the time span, and then the status will be like the string of the last object sent to the console. And then yeah, so I don't really know why I had you know what? Yeah. So the elapsed is if the end isn't set to 1, then what it'll do is it'll take the time now, and then it'll subtract the start time. But if the end is set, then it'll use this end, which let's say I wanted to rewrite that actually. So I'll do that while, you know, that's churning away in the background. So I'm not going to keep this in here, but I want to demonstrate like how I go about trying to like make things simpler on myself. So we'll say date time now, this end time, this end set. Return time span flag minus this start time. And so what that does is, you know, I can't demonstrate it right now, but if this is 0, then it's going to select now because it's the first in an array. This is an array selector. This is an array right here, right? So that's the first, that's the 0 position, and that's the 1 position. And then this acts as an index selector. And then the flag will capture it to a variable, and then it will use that variable to be able to subtract that, so I don't have to have it written twice there. So I look for little ways like that. I'm not going to change that permanently right now, but you know, if I spent all my time doing that on all my work, I never really be super productive in getting anything new accomplished or whatever. So yeah, and then I don't know why that's showing a red squiggly right there. But anyway, the console time, anyone who looks through many of my classes and functions and stuff, they'll see that I do this quite a lot, where I'm reaching into an object that I've already defined up above, like that one or that one, and then it's calling the object. And then I will use a method to call upon to instantiate that object. This status equals this console entry, this output count, this elapsed, this status.state, this status.status. You know, like, I don't really like when some of my programming has like redundant words in an array like that, and then I try to make it look grammatically sound, although it's not something that I can do consistently depending on how much thought that I put into a given circumstance. And so sometimes I'll get stressed out and then I'll just leave something around and not finish it. I always wind up circling around at some point whenever I'm up to the task. So the initialize is not all that different from you know, hitting what is it, system diagnostics stopwatch start new. I don't know, I think it's that, right? It's not all that different from that. And then, you know, if the start isn't set when I go to initialize, it will throw that error. Well, it won't throw an error, it will just say, oh, start error, already initialized, try a different operation to reset, and then finalize. So like a lot of the stuff, I could streamline a lot of it since I've learned quite a bit since I've implemented this whole methodology here. But the thing is you're not going to learn how to do things efficiently the first time through. It's going to take some time before you figure out newer methods that work better, or they're more efficient, or, you know, like maybe right when I wrote that, maybe I was tired, maybe I wanted to go to sleep in the next 10 minutes, and then I didn't think to use the flag variable or whatever. Or like I don't even have to use that variable. I could put that whole thing that was there in place of that, and it'll work. You know, return time span, and then have that whole you know, array date time now, or this end time end array, and then have the array selector, this end set, and then it would basically be a one-liner. So like, yeah, I am going to actually show how to do that right now. So do this, right? It's going to be an ugly one-liner, but it'll be a one-liner. then that is it. That's a one-liner that does the same thing that does. But I mean, this is really confusing to look at, you know, whereas this isn't confusing at all. You can see that the variables that are being piped into it are going to create that object. So sometimes I'll go for form over, like, I'll go for how it looks and whether it looks confusing versus, I don't know. So anyway, the reset will restart the console time objects, and then the reset actually instantiates itself whenever, you know, whenever it's called and whenever it's instantiated, it will use that method, but it can be reused. And so I try to write a lot of classes that have like a quote-unquote main method, and then utilize a strategy like that. As you can see, it's about 17 minutes through there. And yeah, so the current will show the current status, or it, I don't know, I can't even really explain all this because I haven't worked on it in a while. And I remember working on this was a little confusing because every time that I would think that one method was going to be able to accomplish all the things that I wanted it to do, and I would realize, nope, it's not gonna. So then I had to make a new method that did something slightly different, and then I had to make a new method that did something slightly different. Then I had to make, you know, dumb console. I don't really know why I have that in here. It shouldn't be there. And it's not gonna affect anything, but you know, this output to string. So if I hit the, if I see this object in the console, it's going to return the amount of time that's been elapsed for the console, and then if it doesn't, it will. If it's been completed, then it'll show that. There is probably a better way for me to write that, but I didn't think of it at the time. Whereas, you know, why don't I just showcase it? Basically the same exact thing that I did in the first block. This lapsed or this span. This span. Right. That does. That's one line that does the same thing as that. And I'm not going to change that right now. So anyway, this is a 1x track by a 4x character chunk of information for write host. So when I showed the write theme thing, that's what this is, and I wanted to include that because I wanted the colorized message to be available whenever I used this function. I'm not going to go into great detail talking about that because this is. Why is that opening? That doesn't want to open. There's that one. Alright, so something happened and now it's not allowing me to open or close stuff. Yeah, so 20 minutes in, it's about 54% installing all those features and stuff. Some of those features aren't exactly pertinent or necessary for FightingEntropy to be installed, but you know, might as well add them on there because you're gonna wind up working with all that stuff. You know, being able to use IIS management is pretty important to getting something like MDT to install over HTTP or HTTPS rather than SMB or what the hell is it? I think that it uses server message block to send all the stuff over in MDT. Might be wrong about that, but I don't think I am. There we go. So I just had to, you know, open and close a tab or whatever. Theme block, theme track. So yeah, without having a console open, I don't really feel comfortable having it open because it might crash. But let's say module get FE module of 1. So that'll get it silently, I think. pretty sure. Doesn't usually take that long, but there's a lot going on the system right now. CPU is at 100%. Yeah. So, understanding how these methods work requires me to have to scroll down to the module controller. But that right there, that whole message, it is using these to be able to reproduce that. So let's say module write date time now. There it is. Let's say I wanted to say Jeff Snorer told Red Rover to move over, and now we have PowerShell. You know, get a little cheeky with it. I can also, you know, I have demonstrated this before, like use different colors and stuff. What is it? 33. Yeah. So like at some point I'll probably add like other themes and stuff, but most of the colors that show up between like 1 and 32 are just like double toned, same color. And I didn't really implement, I don't know, let's see, write theme flag. So I haven't worked on that in a while. But yeah, and then banner. So I mean, it's not rocket science what I'm doing, but you know, just putting a little bit of character into what might work and whatever. So now I'm gonna minimize that again. Anyway, yeah, those two functions I just showed, they touch on these classes right here to be able to manage what, or not that one, to manage what write theme or write host sends to the screen. And yeah, so like this is set up to be like a CSV or something like that, but it's not a CSV. It's just kind of like showing, it's using a comment block to be able to tell you what's what. So the default is 0, and then by changing any of these numbers, it'll change. The last number is the font color, I believe, or the background color. And then, yeah, I'm not going to go into great detail about that. So, I don't know. I was trying to find ways to make adding different masks on a little bit quicker to do. But I don't know. I think I just made it more complicated by doing all that. However, trial and error is pretty important to do. And unless you try stuff, then you won't know what will work good and what won't. And so that's what a lot of this is. This is all basically a string of math. Each of these is controlling like the default tracks and stuff, and then after it sets a default track, and then it can insert like text and stuff, and then change the color for where it's putting text and stuff in. I probably will wind up writing all that all over again, but it won't be today. I don't think it's necessary to get into all of that, but you know, it's there if I ever want to pick up from where I left off. That's the idea. All these functions in the module, they're ideas that I've had. Like if I ever want to pick up where I left off and not rely on something like ChatGPT to write all my programming for me, then I can challenge myself to write it, to do it myself. You know, and that's why I spend a fair amount of time mulling over how I'm going to go about doing something rather than actually doing it. You know, like, I could get into like a sociology topic right now, which I don't want to do, but what I can say is this. If you fail to plan, then plan to fail. It's something that every smart dude that's ever lived has stated, or in one degree or another. So with this class OS property, it's not necessarily just for an OS property. It's when this function loads into memory, it's getting properties, and then those properties, the source of the properties will be saved there, and then it will have an index, and then it'll have a name and a value, not unlike PS object properties. This is basically what that is, but it's meant to be able to containerize other different variables and stuff. So yeah, I didn't apply the thing that I normally do right here, where I say object OS property string. So actually, here's what I wind up doing, right? I'll go up to this, and then I'll highlight all of that, and then I'll put that there, and then return the object, and then remove all the types because they're already declared up above, and then change this to this OS property. And the reason I do that is because outside of the scope, I could call upon that method to be able to test whether there's something wrong with that particular object, and then I'll know whether I need to edit this to get something working again, or it might be something here that has a problem. Or see how this has 4 parameters but this only has 2. Well, it's because when I say OS property set, I'm declaring the property right there, and rather than the spam like the script with a whole bunch of information that's going to repeat the same thing, I set a property in this container object, and then this will be able to track, like, it'll be able to input that parameter or that property as a parameter into those. See how it says this source right there, and then depending on how many properties are already in the list, that will automatically populate that. So then I only need to have those 2 parameters right there in order to categorize all those things correctly. But I'm going to put this back to the way that it was because I don't want to edit that right now, and that will change the hash value of the file for me to do that. So anyway, this is finally, I'm pretty sure it has rebooted, or maybe it's about to. Yeah, no, it hasn't rebooted quite yet. So anyway, this is going to reboot, and then when it does, it's going to initialize the scheduled task, and then it's going to actually promote it to a domain controller. And yeah, I don't know, I'm kind of like on the fence right now as to whether I want to continue showing more here and then just switch back, but it shouldn't be stuck right there. Yeah, it's not. There we go. All right, and then you know, the OS controller is basically saving information about the operating system. So like this will differentiate whether it's running Linux or Windows Server or Windows Client, Windows Desktop, you know, like Windows 10 or Windows 11, and then it will the information that was seen in get viper.vom is from this, and then you know, add a property set for environment. You know, environment variables. It'll add all the environment variables. It'll add all the current variables in that host. It'll add all the variables for the actual host itself, and then it will get the version table information there. And see how like the command is slightly different. You know, get child item, get host, PS object properties, and then, you know, get variable, and then get sim instance and everything. So like what I can tell you is that the Get Viper Bomb utility does a lot of the stuff. It extends what this does quite a lot, and this is meant to kind of make it easier to manage a whole bunch of sources of variables and stuff. See a WMI class Win32 operating system, and that's if it's a Windows operating system, it'll get that. I had to put it in like quotes because if this function runs on Linux, then it will crash because Linux doesn't have WMI classes, I don't think, or you can't use get WMI object or get sim instance. Pretty sure like you'll get an error if you do any of that. But anyway, hostname CTL is a Linux command, and and then you'd be able to parse through it with PowerShell to be able to get certain information. So as you can see, it logged back in automatically, and the server manager is going to come up, but the window that came up, that the task that it's about to launch, is going to close the server manager and then continue on with the domain controller promotion without me touching anything. So this is the manifest section type. So I'm going to wait for this to get to. I'm going to wait for this to get to the window there. I don't want to touch anything on there right now, so I want to show how this continues the process. And as soon as it closed Server Manager, it deleted that shortcut for Get FEDC promo that was on the desktop, and that is what it's supposed to do. It's supposed to take all the information that it was fed by the GUI and then get it into the running process and then eliminate it. And yeah, so now that's going to take a minute. Yeah. So we got the manifest section type, the control, function, and graphic. The manifest is pretty important because the manifest is embedded into this whole function here, lower below in the module controller class. And for each section, it's going to have an index, a source, a name, and a hash. And then each section is going to have a various bunch of files. So the section is actually like a folder, but I'm not entirely sure why I have the hash the property there, because that doesn't make any sense. I don't think you can hash a folder, or maybe you can. I don't know why that's there. That's right. So this manifest file, all the files that are in the module, they're pulled from either the GitHub repository or the archive. That it's more than just a file system object right here. It's got an index, it's got a mode, it's got a type, it's got a name, it's got a hash value. It's going to determine whether it exists or not. It's going to keep track of its full name. It's going to keep track of the source of where it is on the GitHub repository, and it's going to keep a variable there for whether the hash on the file that is saved to the system matches the hash on the file in the manifest. And if it doesn't match, then it's not going to validate that file, and then it's going to pull the correct file from the GitHub repository. Although I haven't fully defined when it's going to do that, because I don't know. The content property is basically going to hold the information to build the actual PSM file, which is described in the it's going to be defined in the module controller class. So anyway, as you can see, it's installing ADDS, all tests completed successfully, installing new forest. You can see all these warnings and stuff. It's going to go through all that. And we're at about an hour into this whole process of me starting it up and then recording this version of the video. And so, yeah, the other methods for manifest file, the test path exists. It's going to get a Boolean. Well, it's going to get whenever I'm dealing with Booleans, I like to use an integer instead of true or false. And it's pretty easy to convert a Boolean flag into a 1 or a 0. And in many cases, PowerShell will make that assertion anyway. So this exists, system.io file exists. It's going to check the file name. It's going to check the full name for that path, and if it doesn't exist, then it's going to like try to ascertain it. To create the file, it will test the path, and if it doesn't exist, it will create the file and then dispose it, and then it will say it exists. It won't have any content if it has to create the file, but then it will also, if you want to remove all the files, like if you want to uninstall everything that I featured, then you just use the remove feature, the method like I showed, and then it'll have a way to download the file if you use the install method rather than the latest method, and it will try about 5 times. Because for whatever reason, sometimes the invoke web request will get choked up, and rather than have it catch it and then throw an error, I figured why not do this instead. And if it's going to do it in a do loop, but do try catch until. It's a pretty I have a number of ways to try to do something in a particular order, but yeah, setting a variable and then seeing if it's equal to 5, then whatever. If the content does not exist, exception, it'll throw an exception, fail to download the file, and then it would be very particular about it. It will interpolate the name of the file into that string. See that in an error message. And then the way that GitHub like transmits back information from the repository, it will add like an extra line, like if I'm talking about bytes, it will add a 13 and a 10 onto the end of certain files. I don't know why it does that, but I think it does it particularly for C# files or PowerShell files. But anyway, then there's a little do loop to try to get back to I don't know, I might have to tweak this at some point, but for right now it's working, so I'm not going to mess with it. And then to write the file. So if it created it will create the file, but it won't have any content. But if the content isn't there, then it will download the content, and then it has to save the content to something, right? So that's what that's for. The write feature, not WRITE, not RITE. Or RIGHT. And so then it will use a way to differentiate between write all bytes or write all text. And I think I might have to change this at some point, but for right now that is also working. And yeah, get content if it sees the file is there and the content variable does not have the content saved to it, then what it will do is it will read it. Read all bytes, read all text, or read all lines. And that's it for that file. So every single file has controls over whether to download itself and install itself or remove itself or get the content and then write it to file and whatever. You could do all this from the controller itself, but it makes more sense to have it in the actual file, the class that represents the file system object. Or at least in this instance, it made more sense to me to do it this way. You could do it 6 one way, half a dozen the other. And then manifest folder. So I guess the section portion, I have to figure out like if I'm actually using this class up here. I'm pretty sure I am, but I don't really know. Oh, I know what this is for. This is meant to like just kind of provide spacing when the module first initializes. It's going to provide spacing so that it looks all even and uniform. So that's literally just for the writing things to the console. And anyway, the manifest folder, it does basically many of the same things as manifest file, but it's not related to content or anything. It has more to do with being able to create a directory, and then also getting the hash of a particular file. So if I add a file to the folder, then it will say if file exists, then it'll get the hash value, and if the hash is equal to the file hash, then it will set the match flag to 1. If it doesn't, then it'll set it to 0. And then the whole validation method in the module controller, it looks for all of that, so it is pretty particular about all of that. And I probably could use another way of writing that to match what I did up before, but I haven't implemented that. So anyway, here's what I could say. And see how in that one line right there, it basically replaces everything right there. But I'm not going to implement that either, because sometimes, I don't know, there was another condition where I was having issues where it's neither equal or not equal, which shouldn't make sense, but that's what was happening. Anyway, then the test path, so if the directory doesn't exist, then it will create it. Not too different from the way the manifest file worked. And then the manifest controller is basically a property of the module controller. So it'll have the source, the resource, and the output. And yeah, so really explaining every single little thing that the FightingEntropy module controller does is, I don't know. But see how right here I have this. I should really be using an enum type to do all of that. I don't exactly know why I'm not doing that. I don't know. I wasn't really big on enums a while back, but at some point I embraced the idea of using them because it avoids having to have these strings typed in and then edit them. Whereas if I have an enum, I can scroll up to where the enum is and then make changes to that, and then it will affect the rest of the programming. Anyway, validate, that's pretty important because that will look through the folder and then determine whether if it exists, and then it'll get the existence flags and all of that stuff. Anyway, registry template. Registry template is basically just to propagate the properties into the registry. Oh, by the way, the reason why this is taking a fair amount of time is because it always takes like 6 minutes after it reboots to get to the point where you can enter stuff into the to log in and whatever. So anyway, as I scroll down here, why does this keep doing that? Yeah, this is basically just to insert the controller information properties into the registry so that it can re-import that. Is basically sort of like calling upon not exactly, it is somewhat persistent, but it's not persistent in the same way as like the SMB share or whatever. So anyway, now it is logging in, and after it logs in, it's going to see. I just went through all of that, awaiting reboot, first login on Active Directory domain controller. Now it's going to do reinitialize VM node once the console opens up. And as you can see, like there's a little it says no internet access, but that's not true. It's got internet. And it also said the static IP isn't set, but it was set to static IP. Anyway, now it is at the point where it's going to reinitialize the VM node. And it does kind of like continue past that point, like it's still typing lines in and stuff, but once it gets to the 08 SMB for 30 seconds, it's going to wait for that to initialize. And then, yeah, when it does, it's going to call a bunch of stuff back into memory. And it's going to allow me to send over additional scripts. So that's what it's doing right now. It's sending over the initial DHCP configuration, and now it's configuring DHCP with various settings. It's setting an exclusion range for the particular addresses that were reserved. And yeah, so that's completed. It just set a checkpoint, and then it's going to continue to initialize the FEAD instance. So right now it is executing initialize FE80 Active Directory instance, which will create the organizational unit, the security group, and the user. It'll populate a bunch of fields for the member. It added my credential to the domain admins and administrators, and then yeah, it set the password so that I can log in, and then it exists. And then it also created a GPO. And then, you know, before I could even explain any of that, it just transmitted a whole bunch of these scripts. So that was all completed, and then edit and transmit script blocks. So I did have it saving a checkpoint, but that was sort of redundant. And then it sent over the instructions to install VS Code, which is what it's doing right now. And it takes, I don't know, about a minute and a half, I think, depending on the internet connection. And then it will install the boss mode color theme into VS Code. And then we'll install the PowerShell extension into VS Code. And then, without opening VS Code, by the way. And then it will install Microsoft Edge, because Internet Explorer is not supported anymore. And then it will install the Microsoft Deployment Toolkit, Win80K and WinPE. And, you know, once it gets to that point, it will have... well, it transmitted all those scripts just now. Yeah, see, minute to install Visual Studio Code, and then the boss mode thing that takes, I don't know, 5 seconds, and then the next one takes like 30. The Microsoft VS Code PowerShell extension. But anyway, once it transmits all these scripts, then it can execute them out of sync. So it's all coming down like the properties that are saved over in the other system. So what is written here in quotes and everything is it is expecting this environment to be at a certain state so that it can continue to provide it with the correct instructions, and then you know, not have issues and problems or whatever. And that's what took me a fair amount of time over the last 3 weeks to you know, flesh out and get working. And then, you know, making sure that at the tail end of everything that's being executed right now, I'll be able to log into WinRM and remote desktop with no issue whatsoever. You know, not unlike what I did in the last video. Yeah. And then that's it. You know, the fact that this crashed and I have to like piece together the 2 videos is going to make this, it's going to take longer for me to get this video out and uploaded and processed, but you know, that's all right. Let's see. Install Microsoft Edge. So I did want to add like write progress indicators for each of those script blocks and everything, but I didn't think to do that. Well, I did think to do that, but I didn't implement them. So that's another thing. Like, I'll slowly implement other ideas or whatever. And anyway, the registry temporary key, it creates a registry key, but it doesn't actually propagate the information to the target. It is just there acting as something similar to a PS drive for the HKLM or HKCU. I think even HKCR is on there. But yeah, I mean, this is kind of a little bit more in depth than it needs to be. But you know, I figured I wanted to show off like how well acquainted I am with all these classes that are native to the system and everything. You know, the way that I write the PowerShell is not all that different from how people write C#, and some of the functions in this module touch upon C#. So like the function that stretched out the screen to this display resolution is written in C#, and I'm not the original author of that, though I did think about there are some blocks of C# code that I did not write that's in the module. Particularly the stuff by J.C. Walker, and then something by some guy on Reddit for the screen resolution. However, I did slightly edit them. The J.C. Walker's class type definition, I removed a fair amount of the classes that he wrote because I was able to leverage other classes within PowerShell, and you know, I just needed access to the WLAN API.dll in order to be able to create the GUI in the first portion of this video for the Search Wireless Network. And every once in a while I will write some stuff in C#. You know, in order to edit the J.C. Walker's type definition, I had to become acquainted with writing C# again, or being able to write stuff in Razor and Blazor. That's all C# and it jumps into like JavaScript in some portions, and then also, you know, CSS and HTML. So, you know, a lot of stuff going on in this module, and touching on a number of system functions or commands, as well as parsing output of certain functions like ARP. ARP is pretty easy to parse. You know, anything that you can get into a console, PowerShell can parse it and then turn it into objects. And then a lot of programs like output string input, and then you gotta like parse through it and then be able to do it consistently, which is a pain in the neck. And that's why I started to work with J.C. Walker's GitHub repository and looking at how like he did it and everything, and then getting it working. I still don't really understand the PowerShell reference things, but I understand that there's a variable that's declared beforehand, and then that variable is passed into as a reference, and then the output is basically the reference. You know, it was the input and the output. I think that's how PowerShell references work. I'm not totally sure. Yeah, I learned all this stuff kind of like on my own, though I took a lot of pointers from people along the way. So anyway, registry key. This is actually like looking for the path, whether it exists, and then it loads all the properties and everything. And it helps me to create a whole bunch of information in a registry key. So like if I were to go to regedit, and then go to HKey local machine, software, is software, policies. All right, so part of the reason why I like this approach is because it's keeping track of like every single time that I make an update to the module. And if I make this is the reason why I will spend a lot of time mulling over stuff, is because see how this is very different, and that doesn't have any of the properties, but you know, I made a serious change to how all of the properties input and output for the module would be. That's when I first implemented a lot of that stuff. But as you can see, as I scroll through each one, it's keeping those properties intact. And you know, the properties themselves will be different information to a large extent, but you know, I can interpret what I've changed and haven't changed, and the GUIDs and everything. The version, the GUID, and the date and time and everything are the values that are changing, or like, you know, the caption or whatever. But yeah, it's why I spend so much time doing all that. And then this property right here, let's see. So this is the file for the PSM file, and that's the manifest. That's the PSD file, and then this is the module where it is saving the manifest and the PSM, and then the resource is where all the files that make up the PSM are downloaded and saved to, and then it allows me to edit these, but it will also keep the file intact. So if I make a change to a particular file in a resource, and then I upload it to GitHub, then I rerun the process, and then it gets all the information again. It propagates to the file and the manifest, and you know, the GUID will stay the same, but the hash values for each individual the files will change. So that is, you know, the registry in a nutshell, being able to get all that stuff to stay there in the right order and everything. And now it is it installed the Microsoft Deployment Toolkit, which took like 2 seconds, and then it installed the Windows Assessment and Deployment Kit, which took about 4 minutes and 41 seconds. And now it's installing the Windows pre-installation environment, which is, I don't know, it's downloading like 6 gigabytes of information, and that takes upwards of half an hour or 45 minutes, depending on the connection. Yeah, I don't think it's going to take that long, but you know, I'm overestimating how long it's going to take, because I've had to, you know, I've had to leave this running for like, I don't know, almost an hour to download all this stuff at various points to get it to like work correctly. So anyway, yeah, so all of those registry things allow me to convert the module controller and all the information I'm putting into it into like the registry, so that it can reinstantiate itself. And so the root property here, this is interesting because it takes a mixture of a directory, a file, and registry settings, and then like it will determine whether or not they exist. So yeah, see, create directory, create file, and then also creating the registry, which it isn't here, but you know, if I get to the point at the end of this where I remember to play around with some of the module information and stuff, I will think to do that. So anyway, yeah, it represents a collection of paths for the module root, which is here: registry, resource, module, file, manifest, and shortcut. You know, and then all that information is kind of like static. It's not exactly statically set, but it's set to a degree where it is, you know, it's getting all the information that it is handed, and then it is recreating the likely location of where the module manifest will go and stuff, and where the registry and manifest will go. And you know, then I also have this class right here, which helps me to create stuff that goes into the markdown file, and then also extract information that's in the markdown files to be able to create an object that, what is it, line 1423 is where I'm at right now. It'll recreate this object right here. So that class that I just showed will recreate that module. Was it 1423 that I was at? Yeah. So yeah, military time, being able to get things into military time will always cause the date time object to work correctly. If you try to use like the PM, AM, PM thing, that also works, but you know, some formats that are legitimate won't work with the date time object for some reason, so that's why I will convert it to military time basically every time that I can. And then also setting it to a string so that I can like paste it to you know, put it on GitHub or whatever. So like this whole entire module like interfaces with the GitHub repository to a large extent. You know, it is the GitHub repository, but it's basically figuring out what it needs and when it needs it, and then what it has to do in order to create or to do whatever it's meant to, what it has to do. And it's going to sound nonsensical, but maybe to some people that won't sound like nonsense at all. And then the validate file. So this is a different object that sort of extends the manifest file. So it'll have an index, it'll have a type, it'll have a name, it'll have a hash, it'll have a current, which is, you know, it will have the hash value that the manifest has, and then it will run a hash check on the file that is in that place. And if it doesn't match, then it's going to tell you that that file doesn't match, and then, yeah, and then it will also change the file itself. So this, technically I don't even need to have this, but I put it there as a way to keep the validation objects separate from the actual object that's representative of the file system object and stuff. So anyway, a markdown archive entry is basically when you use the latest method, like I did in the beginning, what it does is it reaches out to GitHub, and the module controller will have the information. So this particular file will have the information for the markdown file to look for, and then it will use regex to extract the versions that are there. And then the versions that are there will have a link, and then that link will be provided to the installation where it just refers it to the correct archive, and then it downloads that archive and then extracts it, and then it does AS check on all the files inside of it, you know. And then the module controller, the factory class to control all of the aforementioned classes. So this is the module controller, and basically everything that I showed off in this is in this. You know, it's a function that's a part of this, but it's effectively, I've thought of ways to make it so that it is virtually identical. And then I got to a point where I was literally, I would edit this file and then copy paste all of the classes and then paste it here, or I would copy it from here and paste it there. And then the main difference between the two is, you know, this has a function written at the top, right? It's got all of this information, everything written at the top, and then, you know, it's got these parameters set so I could grab resources from the thing without having to be too detailed about it. And then, you know, depending on the switches from the functions, it'll use the parameter set and name the switch, whether it's going to invoke it that way, or it's going to invoke it that way, or whatever. And look, it is just about done. So module, oh wait, no, VM. So everything that I wanted to show off is basically complete, except I didn't think to do this yet. Right, so let's do that now. Creates a session token, and then it's going to connect to that device, and now I'm on it. So I'm going to say module equal get FE module, mode 1. All right. So that's going to import it through the on the virtual machine. No, it's not doing it in this session right here, mainly because it's using my user token that I created in Active Directory. I could probably show that off. Go into Active Directory Domain Services and go to, I didn't mean to do that. That's what I meant to do. So anyway, it's going to be a little difficult to read, but I'm going to domain controllers. As you can see, the same information is there through PowerShell PS session. I just wanted to show that that's through WinRM right there, as you can see. And then here, the reason I'm able to use WinRM is because that function created the function get FE initialize FE80 instance. Well, it created this user, that security group, and that organizational unit, and then it also created group policy objects and stuff. And then there are like other things that I have to address, like DFS replication and whatnot, and some of that comes down to just like further configuring some of the stuff. If I go into DHCP, actually, you know what I'm going to do? Open MMC, because I have console open in the Z drive, or whatever should be the Z drive. So there it is. So yeah, this is the MMC snapping tool, which I got extensive introduction to this at Capital Region Career and Technical School, as well as New Horizons. But anyway, yeah, the address pool, there it is. It's got exclusions there. That's what I added. And if I go to the scope options, it's basically pulling from the server options. And the server options are, that's the router, that's the DNS domain name, and that's the broadcast address. Though, yeah, I don't know. Anyway, let's see. You could add stuff for IPv6, which I haven't implemented that yet, but whatever. And then the forward lookup zone. You typically want to go in here and then add a host for, well, I don't have it added to the domain, but what I'll do is say L420x64, 192.168.42.24, add host. Done. Now if I say ping L420x64, oh, there he is. And then it's adding that DNS suffix right there. So if I say 192.168.42.24, there it is. So less than a millisecond to come back with that. And then also, what I wanted to show off was this to some extent. This this is the initialized VM node controller here, right? And then so control.function. So it has a feature to where it can use a standalone. It doesn't need to install the module in order to use this, but if the module is installed, then it's going to go for that instead. And then the network, control network, everything that the VM controller passed over is here. If I go to DHCP, there it is. It's an object, the exclusion. That's all the stuff that's in the exclusion range and everything, right? And then we got SMB. And that's got the information to recall that drive, and it's got the username and the password. And I don't really do a hell of a lot with that folder or file beyond like saving stuff for this SMB thing. Not a big deal. I could scrap it at any moment. And the only thing that I don't like about this adapter part is get type. It's a sim instance. So sim instances will just like stringify like a whole bunch of stuff, like MSFT and net adapter. And I got to the point where being able to save some of this stuff to classes and stuff. Like if you pull that up, that looks great. But you know, if I would make a custom class that puts the information in a similar manner, and then it would come back with more with less information than what's right there. Because do I really need to see like all the property names? No. I mean, it's useful, but it would be better if it showed up like this. But it can't do that if it's showing up as a string. So these are things that I've had to figure out. But anyway, the script here. So if I go to output, see how they all have an index, they have a name, they have a display name, and they have a content. So if I say control script output 0, not that bracket, content. See how it's got all that script information that came from the host system. So that's important to be able to transmit that without having to use the virtual keyboard to transmit everything. And the way that it transmitted it was practically instantaneously because it used the start TCP session function that I made to be able to transmit an entire file. Or well, the object that it transmitted had a name, display name, and content. Right? That's what it transmitted over as a stringified XML or JSON object, and then it converted the JSON back into a full object. So I mean, like, I'm not saying anything that's gonna it's not gonna sound new to anybody who's like a senior software developer or even like mid-range software developer, but you know, for anyone that like is curious about how I would go about like being able to put all this stuff together, they're gonna want to know like some of my manners and methods and stuff. So at some point, I am going to reintegrate stuff with PKI infrastructure, which is necessary in order to get HTTPS to work correctly. And all these prerequisites need to be in place in order for, you know, something like the Microsoft Deployment Toolkit, which is right here. The Microsoft Deployment Toolkit. So there's no shares here, but the next video that I make will feature the new FE infrastructure thing, which kind of encompasses all of these things, and then it shows it in what the hell is this? Oh yeah, IPv6. Yeah, those errors aren't a big deal. So what I can do now is I can actually close that, and then I can close these as well, and also close that. Well, actually, before I do that, so I wanted to open all this stuff up. So all that is my information, whatever that got populated by initialized FE8 instance. It's not my real address. It's my login information and stuff, profile, telephones, organization, and you know, going through all this stuff. This is stuff that companies they're going to be interested in, because I don't have anything here that says that I'm a domain admin. But if I go into engineering, members, Michael C. Cook, member of, administrators, and domain admins. So I could also add in other, you know, groups and stuff. I could add it to this group scope is global security distribution group. Anyway, that's that, right? Those allow me to be able to use WinRM with that account. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to sign out, right? And then what I'm also going to do is close that, because I don't even need that anymore. I installed everything. I don't even have to be involved in setting up most of that system besides the get FEDC promo, right? But let's say module, let's say root and list. So those are all different properties, but being able to turn them into a list of objects like that and determine whether it exists or not. And then, you know, if I want to look at any other properties, manifest. The manifest output. It's going to show me the 3 containers. I'm going to say 0.item, and that's going to show me all the individual files under the control path. And then I'm going to say 1 for the functions. So as you can see, get FE module has XXXXXXX, which is not a valid hash, but that's because the installation in the that particular function, I don't know how to get that in there with the correct information. Well, let me rephrase that. At some point, I will wind up probably getting this down to like assembly level, and then once I get it to that point, then I can, well, you know, scratch the comment that I just made. All of these files here, I will insert a date at the top. See, this is the last time that I updated that file. So if I say date, time, whatever, that's not right. I think it's saving it to that machine's clipboard, so it's not going to do me any good right now. But yeah, so the format that I would use is now, yeah, that's it. So that format right there. If I wasn't running a PS session, I could take that and then paste it right there. But anyway, what I'm going to do now is connect to that right now, which should work. Unless I have to exit the PS session. Well, oh, you know what? I know why it's not working. Let's see. What was the IP address? vm.network. 192.168.42.1. So get. I have to change the host file because I manually edited that. So it's env winder / etc drivers. Hold on a second. Yeah, that's it right there. So I'm not gonna go over that because I was just kind of experimenting with an idea that I had. What was it? 42.1? Pretty sure that's it. And now if I try that, it'll work. All right, so there it is. And then, you know, just getting everything in order to make this video. Took a fair amount of planning and getting things, you know, to the point where it's at. Like all those functions that are in, I had to modify and then implement changes to. I had to modify and then make sure that the changes that I made, that they worked and that they didn't break. And that is the name of the game, I guess. You know, you got access to ChatGPT nowadays where you can just have it do basically most of the work now. So, you know, if you want to come up with an idea on your own, it's got to work and it takes time. So, anyway, I don't know, what else did I want to do? I'm going to comment that out, actually, because I don't want that to be there unless I manually select that. But yeah, that worked. And then setting up a Sama share for the images. So I'm not going to do that because that takes a fair amount of time and I'm almost out of time. And then also setting up the password, setting up another SMB share, transferring the files using you know, get FE image manifest, which is right there. So get FE image manifests. You know, at some point I will showcase all of that. And you know, here's something else that I could do real quick, actually, if I want to perform a second WinRM configuration. So instead of using like enter PS session splat, notice how it has the 192.168.42.1. So if I say exit, right, and then well, I can't do it now because I closed it out, but let me go back into it actually. So DNS name equals TRL equals initialize vmnode, reinitialize, and that's going to import the module and then allow me to pull back that object that I showed in the console a few moments ago. So there it is. And then I want it to say network dot host name. There it is. So say DNS name equal, right? So basically what I'm doing right now is just recalling that whole thing there. And then cert new self-signed certificate DNS name, which I don't even need to really have that variable DNS name if I just put that method I used up above in there. Cert store location is going to be cert local machine my, right? And then thumbprint is going to equal cert.thumbprint. And then say hash equals host name equal DNS name. Hold on a second. I can't do that actually. You gotta do that within double quotes, and then certificate thumbprint so that's going to get input into the WinRM thing there. And then the string is going to be WinRM create WinRM config listener address equal star plus transport equal HTTPS, and then put the hash right there. Yeah, I think that'll do it. And then invoke expression str. What I do wrong? Why I do this? Oh, I didn't put the equal sign. Okay, so then I have to remove the one that's already there, I think. So I have to go to GCI, WSMan, localhost. What was it? Config. What? You know, I'm not going to troubleshoot it right now because I know exactly what to do. I don't want to make this video take a heck of a lot longer. And you know, it's trivial to. It's not exactly trivial to have a connection to WinRM, but I'm trying to edit the WinRM management while I'm connected to it, and that might pose an issue, and then I'll have to reconnect using the remote desktop. But you know, this is stuff that I could feature in a future video, so I think I will do that. So I'm going to end the session there. I'm going to exit out of this, right, and then you know, now I'm at the point where VM remove, and now it's been an hour and a half. Well, an hour and 52 minutes, hour and a half, yeah, off by about 22 minutes. And then I was able to showcase a lot of different stuff. I didn't showcase everything that I wanted to showcase because, you know, this video would take, you know, I don't know, many hours if I, you know, included transmitting the images and stuff. Whereas if I make this video and then upload it and people see it, then I don't know, maybe people will be interested in some of the things that I'm putting together. So anyway, it takes a minute for the machine to be destroyed, which I showcased earlier in the beginning of this portion of the video. I don't know why, like, this laptop crashes as often as it does, but you know, once in a while it won't. And then it'll get all the way through everything that I featured. And then cool stuff happens afterward. I don't know. So yeah, I was able to showcase a whole bunch of stuff, and then do a little bit of live editing on this WinRM. You know, I didn't get too into the nitty gritty with it and everything, but I managed to show off like MMC and Microsoft Deployment Toolkit real quick. I didn't really show off the new FE infrastructure utility, but that is going to be something that I feature in an upcoming video. Might not necessarily be the next video, but it will be in an upcoming video, because I'm going to implement invoke SimDB, which that's what I missed. I wanted to showcase that. SimDB, invoke SimDB will allow me to be able to create those people, like I don't know, be able to create some of this stuff and then implement all of that. So why don't I show that right now? Actually, I think I was supposed to put the mode on there. I'm not sure. Yeah, I don't know why it shouldn't be stuck. Pretty sure it's stuck. good thing that I disposed of the VM-controller before I tried launching that. So that is something to consider. Launch. I haven't edited this since like June, but you know, SimDB allows me to be able to create like a whole bunch of stuff for, I don't know, without getting really detailed about it and letting it explain itself. Being able to create a bunch of users and things related to managing a computer shop or a company and whatever. There we go. That's what it's supposed to do. It's supposed to keep moving there. But it's not supposed to stop right there. Yeah, I don't think that has really anything to do with my programming. I think every once in a while the host just locks up, and that's what it just did. So maybe I'll feature that in another video. Oh, it did manage to do that. I don't know why it's taking that long to load. It shouldn't be taking that long to load. You see, it just took like 2 seconds to get to there. You know, the ADDS controller. I didn't. Yeah, I'm not gonna go over all that. But anyway, let's say I create a user. The user is going to be Michael C. Cook, Senior, 1718 US 9, Clifton Park, New York 12065. Right, and then gender is male, 524 1985. Right, and then you know, I want to add a phone number, so it's going to be my mobile number. And then it added that. And then now I got the email, so I can say company. Well, I can say personal. There's that. And then, you know, I don't have to add a device in particular, but something isn't set. Yeah, because now I can save it. Now I can save the record, and it saved it to the database, the mock-up database. And if I double-click on it, then it opens it back up, and then it has a different view there. So yeah, these are all things that I wanted to get back to, like, further developing. And at some point, I will be featuring Get FEDC promo, which will be, or not, I mean, not Get FEDC promo, new FE infrastructure, and then, you know, I'll be able to get into like the nitty-gritty of how to get all this stuff working together, you know, because it's supposed to integrate all this stuff. But you know, I'll show all these other pages which aren't done, but you know, if I want to add a service, I could add it as a rate or as a task, and then it'd be a flat price, or it could be an on-site. I'd go to a specific place to do a specific service, and then I add it to the an invoice right there. Right, and then if I want to add a specific device, I can add a desktop, a laptop, smartphone, tablet, console, server, network, unspecified. You know, I have serviced every single one of these devices, so being able to have a program that helps me manage all this stuff is pretty useful. And then, you know, at some point I will finish the rest of it, but I'm just going to show what each of these pages looks like. This is what my graphical user interface design work looks like. So, yeah, it doesn't pipe over to an existing database or anything like that, but it very well could. And so that is, I think that's going to do it for this particular video. At any rate, if you liked what you saw, feel free to like, comment, or subscribe, and thanks for watching.